begin from where we stopped, and that was the tool that we are considering. So colleagues, we assume that each one of you has taken some time, try to reflect around the course units they are teaching at their institutions, and try to do that learner needs analysis that we need to do in order to have a very good course, online course unit being developed or designed. So what I'm going to do now is to share with you feedback from a form, because we cannot allow each one of you to present their personal forms. You are so many, but we are going to share a sample form that has been filled in to try to illustrate what expectations you should have had after filling in the form. I will share the form right away from my side, the tool, so that it can be what? It can be seen by each one of you. Okay, I'm sharing right away. Where is it? Yeah, this one. So colleagues, as part of the information, you were supposed to feed in at least a course unit. And our assumption here is that a course unit, research methods, is being proposed for studying, okay? Probably what I need to illustrate here, that is research methods for undergraduate. Because research methods usually happens at the different levels, but this is a research methods for the undergraduate, and we are trying to analyze it before we take it online. So going forward, sorry, just a minute, I've just updated something. So it's trying to save. Okay. So here the question was, what levels of learner autonomy? And you know that we already looked at that there is a procedure, there is personal, and there is significant autonomies. And Fiona, are you there?
I'm present, sir.
Okay.
Present,
I
well.
wanted her to explain more to them what procedure, what personal, and what significance autonomy, and then why we actually deciding to go for a personal autonomy here. So probably Drake, you can avail that.
Okay, thank you, Prof. So for purposes of, Prof, you're running, you have the slide on your side, the screen. So colleagues, when you look at a course like research method, it involves a lot of student activities, which means go out there, search for knowledge, reflect on that knowledge, and report about what you've gotten. However, this is an undergraduate course, whereby we assume that it's a research method which has a significant component of the definition of critical concepts, but a close monitoring and mentoring of the student. Unlike like a PhD, where the student has the foundation knowledge. So in that respect, we could not go for the procedure autonomy, which is more a transmission. So it's more ideal that you have a personal autonomy, where the student is guided. For example, you teach students how to come up with a research problem. Then the student goes ahead to research and develop a problem statement, which you review and provide feedback. From a problem statement, you say, how do you develop research objectives? So again, the student does. So you can see that you have what you call scaffolding activities, but with a closer support, yeah? Which may not be like a case for a PhD student, because he knows these things, he can go and develop an entire concept and bring it together. So that's why in this kind of like at an undergraduate level, personal autonomy was selected with scaffolding activities. Next, can you slow down? So what type of learning approach that we wish our learner to adapt for this course? So we know that we had a transmission approach, we have a transaction approach, and then of course we have a transformative approach. So we appreciate from the foundation we had in the morning that transmission is largely teacher broadcasting knowledge. Transactional is closer support. So small chunks activities performed with a feedback. So you are saying if it is a problem statement, it is a transaction. The student proposes a problem statement, a facilitator, you reflect on it, and then you provide feedback. Then the student enhances. So that's why we felt that for a course like research method at undergraduate level, a transaction approach would be more ideal. But if this course was at graduate level, then a transformative approach would be more ideal. We drop down. So which activities, teaching and learning approaches and activities will you use? So there are many activities as we indicated. So on reflecting a course like this, we say, look, in our undergraduate course research method, we would apply presentation and lecture. Here as a teacher, I would go and define basic concept, the different research methods, the different approaches of presenting research work and theories and so on. Then we said, look, there'll be classroom discussions. We encourage learners to assimilate this concept. Learner presentations. For example, a learner is given an assignment to go and develop some research objectives, and he comes and presents them. Of course, there's a research activity. The learner goes and investigates a given philosophy. Then we have case studies, we have seminars, then we have individual self-study. So these are some of the activities we identified for this course at this undergraduate level. Of course, any lecturer, you can choose different activities that are commensurate to your desired outcome. Next, can we slow down? So, given what we've selected, so what can we organize these activities in line with the approaches? So you realize that presentation and lecture, which is largely in this concept, is about transmission. So this is a transmission that is straightforward. But you are seeing classroom discussions, learner presentation, and seminars. These are largely transactional. There's a close support. Then individual case study, research, individual self-study, case study, and research, those are transformative because they involve a learner taking a direct control of the process of knowledge, knowledge mining, assimilation, and also representation. So what kind of learning might our chosen delivery and activity foster? So clearly, at surface, for surface, it will be largely someone appreciating knowledge facts, which is the presentations of a lecture, strategic thinking, that is classroom discussions, and then deep learning, which is really focused on reflection of knowledge and synthesizing of new understanding. Those are the three activities we identify. Next. So in terms of how a storyboard will look like, so as we earlier on alluded to, that it is imperative to appreciate in any delivery mechanism of a course, you cannot have only one means of delivery or one level of autonomy, but rather one area will be dominant over the other. So you look at level of autonomy, we shall have some bit of procedure. Yeah, that presentation is bit of procedure. And that is focusing on delivery of facts, knowledge, so that the learners are aware of certain basic concepts. And that leads to surface learning, and largely the teaching method is behavioristic, and the delivery mechanism we are using on that is transmission. Personal level is your application and analysis. So you're looking at an example, you teach a student this onion concept of conceptualizing a research problem. and the student must apply that knowledge on a particular phenomenon and analyze it, and then share the understanding, which leads to your strategic learning. But the activities, because the concepts are being rolled over one over the other, you are largely using scaffolding approach. One concept builds onto the other, onto the other, onto the other. And that's why we'll have this delivery mechanism as transaction. You terminate one transaction, you start another transaction. Then at the level of significant learning, here we have synthesis and evolution. Yeah. So really, you ask a student to go and conduct research. Is, for example, the radio, the delivery of teaching and learning currently in Uganda through radio to secondary and primary school, is it effective? So a learner goes to the community, does a deeper analysis of the environment, looks at the social constructs, develops a unique understanding. And that's what we are calling constructivism, okay? And leads to transformative. So the learner will use the principles you apply, actually try using the social constructs to generate a new form of knowledge and a new appreciation of that context. So colleagues, this is a way we would have prepared our understanding to deliver this course research method at an undergraduate level. Thank you, Prof, and over to you, colleagues.
Thank you so much, Drake, for presenting that very ably. And I'm sure the colleagues out there have been able to note and assess or evaluate themselves against what it should have been as they were filling in the form. So colleagues, I don't know what you have out there, but our expectations are that you filled in and then closely related to what we have provided, but it should have looked like that after filling it in. But what we can note here is that it is very, very important to consider your learners' abilities and the type of learners that you are going to deal with before deciding on the appropriate learning method. So get to understand who do you have. If you cannot understand them, can you try to prepare for more than one learning style or one learning ability in your class session, so that at least you don't leave out some of the students as part of the learning session. Also, you need time and self-motivation to develop the rich online course content. Colleagues, nobody is going to create for you this very rich online course content. The time you put in is what you'll output. And I must tell you, the first time you do it, it will be, I would say, too much work for you. But the moment you are done with it, going forward, it will be more of updates, and you'll have less time putting in terms of the course design. But what we need to understand is that not all content which is published out there is really appropriate for e-learning. And this is why it calls for instructional design to be part of the content we put together, so that it's not like any other content online out there. As I told you, newspaper content may not necessarily be e-learning content. What we are dealing with here is content that is going to support the delivery of our curriculum. Content that will impact on the learners, content that will make sure that they actually achieve their learning objectives in the most effective way possible. So we'll leave that first session and then dive into the next session. This is now a session that is going to allow you be able to evaluate e-learning course development and effective e-learning design concepts. And we start with a sort of an agenda which I'll straight away go to. In order to be able to offer an effective e-learning, something called a learning management system virtual learning management system, as other people may call it, was developed. And what does it do? What is it? Because as you're aware, e-learning contains quite a lot. Some people may say anything electronic that can be used for learning is e-learning. I totally accept. A TV, a radio, whatever it may be. But not all these can deliver learning which is effective for the different types of people and abilities. And this is why softwares like learning management system or virtual learning management environments were developed with that in mind, that they can be able to deliver effective education in the best way possible. So what is it? It's just a software application for administration. It allows administration, documentation, tracking, reporting, automation, and delivery of education ubiquitously. That is education from anywhere at any time and at a wish. Sorry, there is a repetition of education there, but at least you know it's something that is supposed to support education delivery irrespective of where the participants are. But there are several names that come into play. Sometimes people call them virtual learning environments and learning management systems and all that. But the question is, does it deliver what you want it to deliver in terms of administration, documentation, tracking, reporting, automation, and delivery of the dedication? So that is very, very, very important. And what we've noted is that there are several out there. There are some within the open source market that you don't have to really put in a lot of money year by year to be able to have it. But being open does not necessarily mean it is cost-free. You need to mind about this so much. It is not cost-free because there is some resources that go into configuration and safeguarding the system. It being open source, it is succumbs to a lot of attacks, but being able to configure it so that it does not succumb to attacks is very, very important going forward. And some of the examples of this open source include Moodle, Chamilo, OpenEDX, Totala, Learn, then Canvas, and so on. But then there are some which are proprietary, and that means you have to pay a year license for you to be able to access it. And one of the most common and the top one is called Blackboard. Then Desire to Learn, then there is Saba, and so on and so forth. So the issue that comes to you as an institution, as a person who wants to adopt, what is that I need to adopt? So many reasons why you should adopt that. But we won't venture into that right now. We just want to see how is this learning management system important as we move into delivery online. Learning management systems have a variety of functionality. They can allow course content distribution, where they will allow you to create content, upload content, control the release of the content that for example, if you you utilize the iPush way of content release, then that means that after it is more of a transmission. You push whatever you want students to have. You keep on pushing. But also it could allow the iPool that you completely open it and you allow students to pull from wherever they were. And that means you have left them to be more of you're a facilitator. You've just opened it up. You are an advisor to them. So it allows course content distribution. It allows group communication and collaboration. It allows assessment. Just imagine you are supposed to do assessment for 1,000 students. Learning management system can enable assessment of 1,000 students in less than 30 minutes, 1 hour. but it all depends upon the type of assessment you are using. There are a variety of them. Tomorrow we shall be looking at development of some online assessments so that you get to see which ones can work for you online and which ones cannot work for you online. Remember, students are virtual, are online, wherever they are. So whatever you give them to assess them also matters a lot. This learning management system can do what we call student management. They can manage the grading. They can be able to track students' progress. They can manage how students access the resources. And all this, they keep this information within them that you can go there and look at it in form of graphs and things of that kind. They are customizable, that you can pick appropriate tools for each course. It does not mean that every course you are supposed to use each and everything. No, it depends on the activities you set out. What you do not want, you never use. You can even personalize them. Students can personalize them to their own feel, look and feel. They can change color, they can change images there, they can, and create that it's their personal space. So they've created another virtual learning environment, personal learning environment for themselves. And there are several steps that organization go through in selecting one learning environment, which we don't need to go into today. But the question is, since there are so many ways e-learning can be delivered, why LMSs? Why learning management systems? And there are just three reasons that can really explain this. That one, they are web enhanced. So if you want to simply do enhancement for your teaching, that means you're going to use it to support and enhance the current course you are teaching, and that's it. And here the online component is not a required element of the course. You're just going to enhance the delivery of the content. So that means you may not even necessarily bring in other synchronous form of activities to support the learning, because you just want it as a web enhance. It's like any website. But you may want it to use it as web focused, that you would want to deliver or transfer some elements of the course online. So that means you are focusing on some elements of the course and others are left in the traditional way. The other one is web driven, that your aim is to deliver the entire course. Your primary aim is to have all this course go online. That means you are going to use too much of it. Most of the things are going to be there online. So it is being web driven. So the question is that what would you want to do? Would you want to use the LMS get delivered to you to be more of web enhancing, either web focusing or web driven? It will entirely depend on what you did in your tool one, so that whatever you decide to take online would determine whether you are simply going to enhance or focus or be web driven. So all these things are intertwined together. You don't do one and then forget the other. So all these are picking from what you've already analyzed before. Looking at the specific delivery approaches that we've already seen, transmission, when one decides to transmit, as you may see in the picture here, that the teacher transmits and goes through until it reaches wherever it's supposed to go. And here, the moment we go online and do the transmission, if we are using an LMS to do the transmission, we look at the content, and this is already what we would say predetermined and stable content delivered by the teacher, created by the teacher. So it is already known. You've already put it there, out there. And therefore, students can access it in the way they would want to access it. So how they will use the LMS here is that the LMS is just going to be used for just distributing the content, all the material that is available from the teacher. It's going to be used for a bit of communication. Email from the teacher, do this, do this, do this, or discussions, discuss about this topic. And that is it. It is always structured in such a way that getting this further online material may not be very possible apart from when the lecturer has provided web links. You will not find students actually availing web links themselves because the form of teaching does not encourage them to do so. So it is structured in that way that the dependence is more from the teacher. So what shall we get? We shall definitely get a type of learning which is surface learning, which will have more of procedure directed tasks from the teacher. And no wonder it is that autonomy which we've already seen, which is procedure. And in a nutshell, the teacher is just there to transmit and is a transmitter of knowledge. When we move into transaction, we look at content which is a mix of predetermined and learner-created content. Remember, the learner has a bit of independence to go out, dig for information and come back, learn from wherever and come back. So that means the entire knowledge is not coming from the teacher. Even the learners are constructing their own knowledge. So how we are planning to use the LMS will vary as compared to the previous one, which is more of a transmission. Here, we shall have structured communication between learners and teachers, where we shall have more of facilitated discussions. The teacher is there to facilitate what is coming in and will regularly be there to act as a facilitator, to act as a participant. Okay? We shall look at the LMS as a shell that will be housing web-based resources of different kinds. And also, it will act as a gateway to additional online materials. For example, a lecturer may decide to put a link that directly connects you to a MOOC course where you're supposed to go and follow that MOOC to completion, but it's intended to provide further learning for that specific course they're teaching. Here, the learning is more, emphasis is put on strategic learning, engaging learners in several activities that lead to learning taking place, where they are participating actively. And here, the autonomy is personal. And the lecturer acts as a facilitator in this particular form. The last approach we are looking at is the transformational, where we look at content to be availed under this one. Is fluid, it's dynamic. You cannot predefine this type of content because you do not know what is going to be brought by a specific learner. One might be brighter at really going out there and digging for information, and others may not. But when they bring all this Even the lecturers may wonder, where did you get this? When they have the time, they can explore here and there. So the content is fluid, it's dynamic. And how we use the LMS here is either in a structured or unstructured communication. You cannot structure completely the communication that happens here. Sometimes the learners may want to do it their own way. They may come across something very, very interesting, and they come and post a full resource online without being requested by the teacher. But because they found it interesting, they shared it with their particular students, either via email, the learning management system email, or under a discussion forum, whatever. But it's all about the peer-to-peer. And that's why you can never have it structured alone. So it is a combination of all that. So on the platform here, we are supposed to look at it as one that is going to encourage collaborative student engagement. Whether they are in a discussion forum, whether they are in groups, it should be more of that collaboration taking place. And so it is usually looked at as a gateway to additional online materials. It's a gateway. So emphasis on learning here is deep learning. Learning where students go and dig for information by themselves, construct knowledge out of them, and get meaning, which they can always pass on to their colleagues collaboratively, and then engage in one way or another. So this is why we say that under this, it's more of fully constructivist activities, being grounded on the constructivist theory, that which actually portrays that learners are able to construct their own knowledge. We enter into the class the same way, with no knowledge about something, but we go out differently. Because when somebody presented, we are able to digest, acquire knowledge, digest, and then go out with our own understanding about something. So we construct knowledge in our way. The autonomy here we give is significant. We leave learners to have the independence they need in learning. And whatever they are able to bring back is very, very, very important going forward. And therefore, you as a lecturer, you will act as more as an advisor. So if you decide on those particular methods, it's not necessarily that at all times you're going to follow a particular approach. So sometimes these are merged. But what you need to remember that for all of them, you can use the web enhancement, you can use the web focused, and you can be web driven. For all the three approaches, it just depends how you would want to use that LMS for in terms of offering you those three. And the learning activities that will be engaged will be across either the transmission or transaction or transformation, as we've already seen. But what is necessary is for you to always think about the learning need, the course, and the learner levels that you have with you, and that whatever you decide to select to go with in terms of being web enhanced, web focused, either web driven, you need to make sure it fits the purpose. If you want students to go out there and research by themselves, I do not see why you only go for web enhancement. But you should be able to go for all the three of them, to support them, to allow them to have this significant autonomy to be able to do what they want to do. So colleagues, looking at the actual current learning processes we are having right now within our traditional classroom, we need to really clearly understand what is the linkage between them and what we want to take online. Are we simply going to replicate all what we are doing in the traditional classroom right into the online classroom? The answer is no, it doesn't work like that. And this is why it requires you to do that analysis and then know what can work for me online and for what particular purpose. Does it really fit the purpose? So be careful when you are looking at the user needs. What are those learner issues available to me right now? If learners cannot access the 1 or 2 books that are only in the library, can I be able to provide this online book via the learning management system, and I will have all the 1,000 learners now access the book? You think about their needs. But what you need to understand that your learners you are taking from the traditional classroom into the online classroom are the same. They are not going to change in one night and they become different learners. They have the same learning styles because that's how they are born. You need to think about the skills they bring with them as you think about taking it online. What is their computer illiteracy? You may be wasting your time and people cannot use a computer at all. What is their web literacy? You are trying to get them into deep learning and you require them to go and search the web and come up with writing papers and things of that kind. But when their web literacy is almost zero, so what do you expect out of that? What is their capability of accessing to the course or to the LMS once they are off campus while they are on campus? Is there a situation whereby when they go off campus, they cannot access the learning management system? Then why do you put it on? Is there a situation whereby when power goes off at campus, the entire system is off because the learning management system server is hosted on campus? Is there a situation whereby it is out into the cloud, but the institution has not paid their fees annually and it has been cut off, and you expect them to continue using the LMS? You need to think about all these needs. Sit down, identify what is that reason that is getting you to think about taking your course online. Is it because you've been told? Is it because you're being pushed? Is it because you want to improve your teaching and learning? And once you've taken it there, what are the benefits that the learners are going to get out of that? If it does not benefit them at all, why bother going there? Always, as you set out to get online, remember, not everything can go online. It depends the activities you would want to deliver online. So you need to understand which ones will not and which ones will be delivered online. But what is most important always, the balance between your course structure, your learner needs, your online, and the face-to-face components. That's if you are doing a blended, a balance amongst all those things is very, very, very important. That is the only way you'll provide an effective online teaching and learning. So there are certain considerations that need to be in your mind as you think about going online. For the web component, definitely you'll think whether you would want an activity that is going to lead to web enhancement, that will lead to web focus, or that will lead to web driven. So think about what is that web component that is going to give me the web driven, that my LMS is going to be web driven in that form. Which component? Think about the approach you would want to take. If you decide to go for a particular web component, web driven, so what is that approach that I need to use? Will I use surface? Will I use strategic? Will I use deep? When you decide to go for deep, or you decide to go for strategic and deep, then you know you're already falling under the transactional and transformation. And therefore, all activities should be geared under those delivery methods. You should understand what sort of activities you are going to embed in there. Are they going to be more behavioral, or you are going to have scaffolded, or you are going to have constructivist activities? Again, all these are connected to delivery methods, of which the delivery methods are connected to the approaches, and then also the approaches are connected to the web components. Remember, as we said, the web components can work for any of the approaches and the delivery methods. It depends what you want to really do in that case. Never forget to be as clear as possible. Let all what you do there in terms of activities, let them be realistic, achievable and measurable in terms of, if it's web driven, whatever you put there, is it really going to be realistic? You are simply using the surface and you're using the LMS as web driven, but you require students to go out and dig a lot of information for them. But when you're just transmitting for them, how do you expect they are going to acquire this skill? There is no activity that is requiring them to go out there and dig for information. And you expect them to go into that deep level of learning. So that means you have not actually been realistic, and I don't think you can achieve what you want. Accessibility should be looked at so much also. We've been emphasizing on the type of learners. Know your learners and the issues they have, because you are preparing this for them. Once they fail to go there, you've lost. They've rejected it. So you really need to understand them. Whatever you are designing, design it so that it's accessible. In whatever instructional design you've developed, for example, if you've developed content in form of SCORM files or IMS content package, just make sure it is accessible to whoever wants to look at it or to use it. There is developing something in form of animations, in form of videos, you upload it on the learning management system, but unfortunately, people cannot access it because they don't have the file format. think about all this so that whatever you place there, it is accessible and usable, simple. Think about the course structure and the navigation you put in. Your course structure should be consistent, clear, and intuitive. And this is why we always try to encourage that while creating this online content, can you follow a structure that is recommendable, that is acceptable across the world, and that is the learning object, higher education learning object concept? Is it something you can adapt because it's acceptable? So that it keeps your content consistent, clear, and intuitive. Understand the tools that you need to use. There are several tools within an LMS, but not everything can work for you. So you may need to take some time and evaluate these tools in there, depending on the LMS you are using, so that you know, if I'm going to provide real-time teaching, can I use a Zoom plugin which is already in my LMS? Can I use the big blue button? Or I can as well use the chat room to do my real-time teaching, because it can do the same. But what you need to understand, know the strengths and limitations of the tools and even your LMS. Because somebody used a Zoom in a certain university and you feel that I would want also to use the Zoom, forgetting that the recordings that are done under Zoom, under big blue button, are completely of different sizes. And you may need to deal with one or the other to be able to make sure that it can be accessible by the students after your class. So know the strength of all this, so that when you decide, you have the right tool selected. Always in advance, prepare your resources. Find the time to look for the resources, to look for those web links, whether in YouTube, wherever they are, that are clearly in support of what you are teaching. There is nothing as embarrassing as giving students a YouTube video that does not relate at all with what you are teaching. Never forget to balance between the media reach against the functionality able. However much you would want to bring in all these videos and all the download them and all that, you may want to give these videos, but it's of a bigger file size and the system can only allow you this size. What do? It's better to plan, prepare ahead of time and see which works for you and which does not work for you. Once you have thought about all that, map it out. Just use a simple design layout and know this is this for discussion forum. This is what I will use for the lecture note, for the lecture, real-time lecture sessions. I'll use a big blue button here, or on the second week, I'll use a chat session. Things of that kind, which will help you create that storyboard from which you can see the flow of all this, so that at the end of the day, you do not have monotonous activities appearing, which will get the students bored in your online class. Once you have that storyboard, it is just sitting down on the LMS and try to figure out how you actually take that storyboard onto the LMS. Somebody will look at your prepared course and will actually tell, this lecturer put in time to prepare for their online course. And by the way, the students can tell. We've seen students that come to you and tell you, please, can you tell this lecturer to do like how the other one does? That is an indicator that somebody is putting in more time than the other. Because if they can appreciate, then they should be able to appreciate even the other. But they are also humans, they can compare and contrast. Colleagues, this brings me to our practical session. We have tool 2 now, which requires you to be able to analyze your course design and see exactly what works and what does not work. We want us also to spend as much less time as possible, probably 5 minutes from each one of us. Try to fill in first that tool 2. And then once we come and show you feedback after the 5 minutes, then we should be able to evaluate ourselves and see if we are able to really analyze our course design. Drake?
Prof, you indicated the pairs. I think people are going to do it as individuals since we don't have the pairs, eh?
Exactly, because we are not in groups.
Yeah. So Fiona, can you load the tool number 2? Fiona.
Fiona, are you there?
Is sharing. Yes, okay.
Okay.
Not that one, sir. Tool number 2, Joseph.
Joseph, that's a feedback form. Okay, Fiona, share, please.
Okay.
Enlarge the size, please. Over to you, Drake.
Okay. So we are building, colleagues, we are building on the previous exercise, which all of you did. And now we're extending our design needs analysis. So actually, your learning needs analysis should be used to inform online course design. This will need to extend the analysis to gather information regarding user and logistical needs. I emphasize those words, user and logistical needs. Colleagues, most of us, when it comes to online learning, we think that it's about making PowerPoint presentations or PDF, deposit them onto the learning management system as is basically as a content repository. That's not the case. What logistical needs do you need to have? As you're going to see, for successful e-learning, there are things you must put into consideration. So this tool will help you in your design thinking process to ensure that you have the right mix of the expected outcome, the resources, and also the timely delivery mechanisms. So Fiona, scroll down, task 1. Scroll down, Fiona. Okay, so the very first thing, colleagues, we need to do, we know that any course that we are currently teaching involves a number of activities, as we identified much earlier. So the question number 1 is that we need to identify which elements of that course delivery that are not to be suitable for online. Okay, so we want which content, which elements we like to put online, and which are those we would prefer to remain offline. Okay, so that's the activity number 1. So for example, we had presentations, tutorials, debates, research. So which of those activities of learning would want to take online, okay? Question 2 that you need to address is, why must these elements remain face-to-face? So the ones that you are saying they should remain face-to-face, what is the motivation that you want to have them to remain face-to-face? Do you want to scroll down? Question 3, you need to identify elements or activities that are suitable for online. Now that we know which ones are supposed to remain offline, which are for your usual interactions, what are those that you want to take online? So again, you pick among them, and which end of those will be replacing the face-to-face concept. So there are those that are not replacing, but there are those could be substituting your own online, your offline face-to-face activities. 5, scroll down. Number 5, then you need to justify what benefits will learners get from online component. So you see, it's not a matter of choice of saying this should remain offline, this should go online. You need to think through and take a reflection. Why should you take a particular component online and why should you take a particular component offline in your learning design? Continue. Six, what kind of learning will the online component foster? Remember the 3 types of learning we are reflecting on: surface, strategic, and deep. So you must justify, because the type of learning you want to foster informs the kind of approach you want to deploy, the kind of resources and activities you need to deploy. So you need to justify that choice. Now, 7, continue. So what resources will be needed online? Be clear at a design point. Do you need internet modem? Do you need an online interactive book? Do you need an online self-assessment questionnaire? What are those that you need for your online components? Number 8, if you want to scroll down, number 8. Now, these colleagues, this metric below is extremely important. And this is where most people struggle. And I think in the morning, someone was mentioning that most universities are no longer providing support for tutorial assistance. For example, if you have a large class for online, you can even see what is happening at the moment. We are about 70 to 90 people oscillating in that range. Our prof is delivering the course, but we are a team that is supporting him. The questions come, we are following the student who is asking what, and we are able to support. But just in case, imagine if he was alone. This session will be a little bit complicated for him to deliver effectively. So it is very important at the very beginning of the course to ask yourself, what kind of skills do you need? You may need a simulator. Some people are talking about how do you do science practicals. There are a number of ways. We're talking about augmented reality. We're talking about simulators. We're talking about animations. But some of these things you may not have the domain skills to build them. So you may need someone domain in that area to help you. Technical support from e-learning officer. For example, how do you set up auto-completion badges? Yeah, you may want a student to, every activity he completes, the student needs to get a point of cognition. And you may not have the capacity to do that. So in that respect, maybe you need e-learning support. And when do you need it? Because if an e-learning officer is going to support many lecturers, he needs to know which kind of support, so that if he receives this, maybe he can train you or also expand resources accordingly. What about internet? Sometimes we focus on lecturers, but are our students and learners having like the internet access? When do they access it? Do we consider about their time? Do we consider about their needs? Tutorial assistance. Do you need a tutorial assistance in terms of facilitating this course? What about instruction design? So as we're going to see like tomorrow, when we look at content development using EXE and assessment using Hot Potato, these are really things that you need to do, but you may not have the skills, neither the software to be able to do these things, and so on. So you need to define which needs, and then once you have these needs, then a mechanism is made available. And really, every head of department, every dean should be receiving such an assessment tool. from every instructor or every lecturer at the beginning of the course. So having taken you through this, Fiona, any other component missing? I think that should be the end of it. Yeah, so I encourage friends, colleagues to fill in your tool. You have maybe about 15 minutes, 10 minutes max. Isn't it, Prof?
Yeah, we can get started again at around
10 past.
10 past.
Yeah. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, you've tried to fill it in, just consider some chat. We'll be online to help you. So in the next 9 minutes, just try to fill out that tool. And then afterward, we shall be able to discuss the ideal reflection. Thank you.
And probably it should follow up with what you did in the previous tool. The course you selected previously should be the one you continue with. Thank you.
Colleagues, we have about 3 minutes to complete the task.
Fiona, can you share the feedback form so that Drake can take us through?
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Welcome. I think we have a few people are taking a break. I can see we had 71 and now we have 68, so hopefully they will not miss much. So following what we did earlier, and then we are saying which components will not be suitable for online delivery. For our research method for undergraduate, we simply said lectures and presentation, we design them to remain physical. Classroom discussions and seminars. The reason being that undergraduate students, as we find a reason why we want those to remain. So we selected this, and you can select any other. Number two, so the reasons why would we desire them to remain effective? One is that they need for enhanced concentration on activities. So we reason from experience that undergraduate students, normally they don't have that self-direction of learning. They need closer supervision and control. So since these are core, like presentations, that's when you're delivering the domain concepts, you don't want people to miss out. Because when you're online, you may not control their participation. So we say, for that reason, we keep it offline. Then consideration of resource availability. issues of bundles, internet connectivity, and others. Most undergraduate students tend to come from humble backgrounds. They are not well established. They claim these challenges. So we don't want them to miss out because of limiting factors beyond their control. But also, we observe that much as online provide a lot of, right now, like we're using Zoom, it does not give you a 360-degree view of the participants. You are not seeing what is going behind my background or in front of me. But in a class, you can see a student who is looking the other side, who's pausing to chat, and so on. So we feel these core concepts, core activities that are critical in grounding the learner in research should be delivered offline. Continue, Fiona. So, which elements or activities are suitable for online? So we said, look, for our research methods, learner presentations, they can present online. They can do research online. They can conduct case studies online. They can also do individual self-study online. Which, if any of these will replace the face-to-face component. So we feel the other ones that we put above are the ones that are going to be replaced. Continue. Continue, Fiona. Five, what benefits will learners get from the online component? Because for learners, we need to provide incentive mechanism to allow that motivation. So Fiona, scroll down so you can see what we feel. So one is that we said activities can be undertaken ubiquitously. So the learners have the freedom of arrangement, the freedom of management of their time and level of interaction. If someone wants to do research past midnight, there's no problem. If someone wants to hold a conversation with a colleague during lunch break, there's no problem. So those activities, they have that freedom. But also, online allows the building of self-esteem. Some learners have weak self-esteem and they don't express themselves in the physical environment. But when they are given a remote tool, they are able to actually participate. Participation over time builds their confidence and they build their self-esteem. Online empowers learners who cannot express themselves physically, like shy learners, to actually express themselves and become active participants. Then through multiple material, participants are able to get learning that is entertaining. So as Prof. Jude indicated, we have different learners and we use different forms of learning, others visual, language, and so on. So this online allows the learner to choose the most appropriate mechanisms of assimilating knowledge. Then, more importantly, it promotes collaborative learning. Colleagues, you have to agree that the current model of classes where universities are paying lecturers or computing lecturers' effort on hours spent studying in class does not ably represent the level of effort a lecturer needs to support a learner. So 6, what kind of learning will the online component foster? So this is a research component. So we are saying we are focusing on growing the learner's ability to develop what we call strategic, critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Therefore, we have strategic and deep learning. And largely, the approach we are using is transactional and transformation learning approach. 7. So which resources will be needed? So we note that to achieve what we want to achieve, we need multiple material content, lecture notes, animations, video, PowerPoints. So to appeal to different kinds of learning needs for different learners. Remember the fundamental principle of e-learning. It must be embedded, it must be engaging, it must be entertaining. So all those things must be considered in our learning material design. Things like web links that bring a different context. I can assure you that whatever I'm sharing now, maybe if Professor Jude was to give it a soundbite, it would be a different soundbite. Maybe if Dr. Otto was to give it a soundbite, it would be a different soundbite. So each one of us have a unique authenticity in the learning process. So web links provide a reinforcing mechanism of how different perspectives can be articulated. We may need ebooks, and of course, These days, as Professor Kay had indicated, there's a lot of resources available online, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. But the fundamental principle, colleagues, I would like you to emphasize is that whenever you pick a material, like if this PowerPoint presentation was made today, if you're going to use it in your own training in it, remember to acknowledge, remember to make proper attribution, because it's the right thing in academics to recognize the owner of the content as well. So this has been a weakness. You see some people download someone's presentation, they put their names, they go to class and present as if it's their own, but sometimes they cannot even explain certain concepts. Number 8, scroll down. Yes, so support required. So what do we need? So we said the kind of support we need is e-learning skills. What level? Fiona, we didn't feel this level, but this you can feel. So it's a matter of putting the right tool. So this I explained much earlier. So you can say maybe tutorial assistance, very high. Instruction design, maybe medium. E-content design, like in this group, because tomorrow we are going to do e-assessment design, maybe very high. So that's how you end up feeling this tool. So by the end of this tool, you have conceptualized very well in a very systematic and logical manner the kind of course design you need to establish on your e-learning platform. So thank you, Prof, and colleagues, over to you.
And colleagues, just imagine that your school, the dean has been able to receive such information. Under 8, they should be able to put together explicitly what is that required for them to have this effective learning take off within the institution. So they can put all the data from the different lecturers and then know, okay, I think 70% need of the e-learning skills. Okay, 20% need ICT skills. Then 80%, then the university or institution can know where their priority is in trying to support these lecturers in trying to adapt to e-learning. So it's a very essential tool that can really drive results out of the lecturers. And we encourage you to use it as much as possible to benefit your course units you are teaching and the actual institution at large. Okay, colleagues, I think we are going to have to continue to another part of the session, which probably will lead us to one of the final sessions of today. And what we are going to look at now, assuming you've been able now to design your course very well, it's now the right time to take it online. So there are certain things we need to think through. So we've already looked at what is required. You've looked at the LMS tools, the areas which are there. You've looked at which are enabled and which may not be enabled. You've looked at which are turned off, which you are going to use and which you are not going to use. You've looked at all these activities which you want staged, non-staged. For example, if you want a discussion forum, would you want a discussion forum for every week? And when do you start it? When do you close it? And things of that kind, all that you've prepared so well. You've also thought about the content formats, because remember, some students may not have the real applications on their systems, on their laptops, or on their phones. So what is that you're putting together? All this has happened into the design. And also you are sure of how you would want these users to use the online system. So sometimes you may need to redesign here and there because of what you found after doing some other things. You may need a bit of some time to really, colleagues, going E, I do not want to discourage you, but it's not so easy and it's not hard. It's the efforts you put in a more structured and logical way. that will get you to have an effective course put online. But what you need to understand, the moment you have it online, it's the start of your very easy teaching happening. Because what you'll do, when it gets, if it's the same course unit you're teaching next semester, what you'll do is do more of the content update. Remove all the assignments that were there, put new assignments. Go change the type of books they are using. But you may find that the SCORM or content files you have there remain the same. So it becomes easier for you to really plan teaching as you go forward. But you need also to think about what you're putting out there. Is it in form of an integrated solution? Does it have all what it needs to have within it? Is it going to have a first component on it, or is just going to go online? Or it's a blend of the two. Once you know the solution you want to take on, then that's when you have determined what goes online, what goes offline. Remember, under the course design, you have been really thinking about all this. But don't forget, as I emphasize, the learning needs are always very, very important. It's coming back. Think through about the interface, the structure. And this is why, if you've noted, it was not by coincidence, but it was by design, that all the PowerPoint we have so far utilized are following the same design template. And it's not by mistake. That you need to be consistent in whatever you do, that it leaves that consistency and permanent digital print, whatever it is going to be. When it's a disorganized template, you have this, you have this, you have, in the end, it does not really bring out an effective solution you would want to really offer to the students. Never forget to be realistic on the timing you are giving to your students. You require them to be able to write a paper by first going and digging, using the deep learning to research about material, and you give them 1 day or 2 days. It has completely failed the concept of deep learning. You can't expect them in 1 day to go search for all the content, write the paper, and then submit it to you. So think about and be realistic about the timing in terms of the activities you are giving to the students. Always maintenance and maintenance and maintenance at the different levels. It is very, very, very important. You may be in the 3rd week and you find that there's an activity that was set in the 1st week and you forgot to actually time it and stop it. So you may actually go back and put a timing and it finally ends. And therefore, it is not a discussion that is going to take forever. So this is called maintenance. You go there and maintain. Students may raise a question and say, but your question you raise is not clear. So you end up going back and maintain and then clearly provide the question that is clear in this one. Ensure at all times that active learning is supported. Don't get students get bored online there. There's so many tools online that can support engagement, active engagement. For example, discussion forums and all that. Use them. Online group work. Use them. They are very, very, very interesting. So, but remember, starting from the activity, from the course resources, all material, all these and the components, all should be intertwined to the learning objectives, the outcomes, and the autonomy of this learner. If the autonomy is procedural, think about activities that go with that. If the autonomy is significant, think about that activities that are required are more into the deep learning. If it is all about personal, so think about more of the scaffolded activities so that they can support these learners. Clear instructions at all times, because remember, you're not going to be there to explain. You would want them at any time, wherever they are able to learn without getting so much of a bother to you. So all the time before you roll out this, don't assume that all students are having the right technologies with them. And therefore, it is always important, if you have developed some SCORM files, some content, you have developed some content, online content, as we shall see tomorrow. The question, can it be viewable in all browsers before you place it online? You don't want a situation where learners will tell you, it failed, it was bringing an error all the time, bringing an error. Did you check it? Did you try opening it in Google Chrome? Did you use Internet Explorer? Did you use Firefox? Did you use Safari? In the end, you've done something for the good of your effective teaching, not for the sake of simply creating something and dump it out there. Think about the uploads you put on, especially the video. Are they downloadable? You may put something that requires half a day to be downloaded off the system for students to use. I'm telling you, they will wait for not more than 2-3 minutes and they will say, we forget about this. And in the end, you've lost it. You've not actually acquired. The outcome is zero because none has viewed it. You would rather create for them a link that sends them there and they view it in YouTube than uploading it onto the system and where for many of them will not be able to download it. Always during the actual implementation and before you roll it out, gather feedback from your colleagues, from the users who are using. Ask them about it. How do they feel about what you've created for them? From your fellow lecturers, how do they like your course you've created online? Do they see any problem in the downloads? Do they face any problem? Find out to them what is missing that they would want to be put on there, which is within another course unit and you don't have it with you. Students will always tell you, ABCD is giving us a lot of discussion forums, which is helping us. This is feedback, use it. Make your maintenance manageable. Don't give yourself too much of work that you'll hate the actual e-learning experience. Always seek out for the support from your institution in doing ABCD as we saw in our last tool, because it will always be there to get supported. Don't forget to do evaluations at each particular stage. Each time review, after analyzing, design, develop, keep on reviewing, evaluating. Make sure you change here and there to allow improvements to happen. Find out whether the learning is actually taking place. Whether you have more learners online than you had in your traditional classroom. If you have even many leaving the classroom, you'd rather abandon. because you are not helping at all. You are simply chasing away more of your learners than encouraging them to come online. In situations where, for example, we are in the pandemic, we just need to find ways, or why are we losing the learners? It could be that they cannot access to internet connection. So institutions, what do you do in such situations? Find out ways how you could support the learners. Can they be able to access these LMSs at zero rates? Then how do you engage the internet service providers to make sure that this happens? And so on and so forth. It is good to evaluate. And after evaluation, you can ably know this is what I need to do going forward, or this is what I do not need to do going forward. This is at the end of the entire project that you need to be able to evaluate what happened. Were your objectives achieved? Did you have something consistent, clear, achievable, and measurable in terms of looking at this as a project? Going online, as I said, may not be so easy and it's not so hard. It depends on what you are really wanting to do. Ask yourself, does the online component support, enhance, or replicate what happens in the classroom in terms of evaluation? Does it really meet the analysis you did in tool 1 and tool 2? Is it clear why actually getting the resources that are there online? Why do you have such resources there and not the other? And are you sure the learners know how to use what you are giving them? You may be doing something and half of the class even does not know how to use an LMS. But you expect them to be there. Find out how can it be improved. What you just did, how can it be improved? Have you looked at what others have done? Have you compared with them and contrasted? What is that they are doing better that you're not doing, that you can actually also borrow and improve your online course delivery? It is very, very, very important to benchmark and see what others are doing. The certain issues you need to consider. Consider the rationale. Why are you really doing it? Consider the delivery. How do you want to deliver this online? Is it via an LMS? Is it via a TV? How do you want? When do you want to do it? And where do you want to do it? And whatever you've developed, what is it? Is it a book? Or is it a SCORM file? Is it a video? Is it an animation? What is this you'd want to give to the student as in terms of the content resources? Think through the design you are trying to put together in terms of the course material. Look at just only the lecture notes. What type of template are you using for your PPT? It can be a template that does not give the institution any branding. Within the content itself, what is in there? What is that type of content? Is it shallow content, or it's really deep content that is going to really support the students? Think about the actual creation of that content. Do you have the ability to create that content you want to create? If it's an animation, do you have the ability? If not, who is that who is going to create that for you? When are they going to create it? After the start of the semester, or within the semester, or prior to the semester? Comes back to preparation. How do you want it to be created? Because remember, you provide the requirements of what you need to create to be created. So how do you want it to get created? You should have some knowledge, because remember, this content is yours. How do you want to present your course unit? In terms of the synchronous and the synchronous activities. Synchronous, we mean activities that happen in real time. Asynchronous, we mean activities that happen not in real time. Let's take an example. Lectures, would want to deliver them both synchronously and asynchronously. And then synchronously, we say we shall use video conferencing using the Zoom tools, or the Big Blue Button tools, or the Google Classroom tool. And asynchronously, we shall use a discussion forum. Synchronously, also, we can say we shall use a chat session for the real-time class session, where I will have all my students in the chat room, and then I start by asking questions and I respond and we engage. And by the time we end 1 hour, my entire topic I wanted to teach is done. And I say to the students, thank you for attending, bye-bye. I'm done with my lecture. But they have been present and we've engaged. It's different from the asynchronous, where I go and post a certain topic in the discussion forum and I say, this is our topic of study to this week, please let's engage. And then you start engaging. Somebody comes today morning, another comes in tomorrow, and then by the time the week ends, everybody has been able to contribute and the actual course topic is done. So how do you want to present it? All this should be known to you as a lecturer. You planned out very well. Your audience, who is your audience? Remember, your learners. You know already their experience they come with in terms of in terms of the prior knowledge, in terms of what they know. Find out, when do you think they need to be able to access? Is it all the time, 24 hours? Is it just evening, weekends? And this will help you determine whether you're going to put there a synchronous activity or an asynchronous activity. If many of your 90% of your students are working class, and you decide to put a synchronous activity, which requires them to come at around 11 a.m. to attend a video conferencing on Zoom, 20% will appear because they are full-time working. So when do you want them to access these activities? Let it be part of your thinking and your planning, because it impacts on the actual attendance and learning. Where do you want them to access this? Is it on campus, home, office, where? So that by knowing all this, you should be able to package your solution so well, which is well planned. So it's just a compare and contrast of the traditional e-learning approaches that one thinks about the classroom and says, I'll have a limited size of what, or I'll have it synchronous. When it gets to e-learning, you don't have to mind about the students. It can be unlimited and can happen anywhere at any time. It doesn't have to be physical space. When it comes to content, here in the tradition, we use PowerPoint, we use textbooks, videos, collaboration. When it gets to E, multimedia is part of it, simulations of, then the digital library here, sharing a book ceases to be a problem and things of that kind. In the tradition, you can hardly get a personalized learning. When it gets to online, personalization really takes place and learners are able to personalize their learning space and be able to learn in the best way possible they would want to learn. So what is your obligation as a teacher going forward? Use all the available technology that is available there to support your teaching and learning, as long as it's acceptable within the university framework. Always and always encourage collaborative learning as much as possible. This is learning of the 21st century. As much as you can, lay foundation for lifelong learning. For example, if you have a Bachelor of Information Systems that has been well developed by the lecturers and all course units have been well effectively developed, that is the start of lifelong learning, that at that point you can be able to even deliver that course, that program on a distance program. And therefore you do not require any of your students to come on ground and things of that kind. You can be able to deliver to so many and then be able to export education across whatever you want to export it to. Never forget to incorporate the old and the new. In terms of content, in terms of the students, the learners themselves, we have retakers, we have new entrants to the course. Think about the two. Don't think about only one group. Remember, the other one comes with already prior knowledge because they are retaking, and then you have only a senior 6 secondary entrant. They are all in the class to study. How do you take care of them? Always and always provide real-time feedback where possible. Do not show the students that you don't care. Online learning can be a lonely journey out there, but when they see the closeness of the tutor with them, students are able to consistently be there and learn. And then you avoid a lot of drop-off. But without support to them, so many drop-offs you will get out of that. Tools that you are going to have with you at all times when you are doing e-learning, the LMSs, learning management systems, emails, they are going to be part of you, whether within the LMS, whether out of the LMSs, but regularly communicate and all that. The online forums, these are very important to engage students at all times. And then the web itself, because things like YouTube and even other MOOCs are all on the web. So you can never leave them out. Let me tell you a situation. You'll get surprised that once you use a group WhatsApp to engage students in a discussion forum, it may transform out to be one of the best even better than a discussion forum that is on the learning management system. And the reason is one, social media. This is where these digital students want to be. So how do we tap into all these technologies we have with us to effectively deliver the learning we really need to deliver to the students? Colleagues, I end that session 4. And I hope my colleagues have been addressing any questions that should have popped up there. And now I would want to dive into the higher education learning object concept that each one of us needs to have on them, which is commonly used in e-learning to really support content development. And I feel that once you are able to know some of the requirements in here, it will be easy for you tomorrow during the sessions, practical session, to put together the concepts and see how it is really developing. Do we have any questions in the chat room? All have been answered, all?
All is good, Prof. We can move on.
Okay.
But we are all is well.
Okay. So colleagues, the higher education learning object concept is borrowed right from, we've already discussed paradigm shift. I will not go back into that. But the learning object concept, again, stems from the idea of trying to, as much as possible, provide personalized learning. Because the theories, the constructivism theory tells us that learners do construct knowledge in their own way. And therefore, if they are able to do so, we need to create for them environments that encourage the construction of this knowledge. So it is based on such principles that people started thinking, theorists started thinking about how do we better do this? Okay. So they started thinking about the instruction. How do we create instruction that is going to deliver for us personalized instruction? That we embed this into content, and then we are able to provide content to whoever wants to use it in a more reusable format. But when it takes care of all what has been looked at in the previous content we've considered, that it considers the learner styles, it considers the prior knowledge, it considers the levels and the delivery methods and approaches. So what we want to see is that I'll move right here. There are several techniques of instruction design. When you look at content we want to design, the first thing we do is gather the content itself. Do we have the content? The content which stems from the actual curricula. Because otherwise, when you go into the actual instruction and you don't have content, you'll not be doing anything. So do we have that with us? So once you have all that, which is well linked to the curricula, then you go and embed instruction within the content. We are going to look at the instruction, which is the learning object, in detail after this slide. But once it's well structured, then you present it. And how you present it is in a variety of ways using e-learning. And this is why we said we can use an LMS. We can use any other learning space. It could be a TV, it could be a radio, as long as it's a digital learning space where content can be presented. It depends what you have with you in terms of technology. So what are these learning objects? Cisco was one of the companies that first used learning objects. And how they defined them, they defined them as any entity, which may be digital or not, which can be used to assist in knowledge construction based on a single learning objective. We are going to see the detail of this. But what it should do, that it should provide meaningful, tailored, flexible learning experiences. So what is important, that the learning object was taken very seriously by the world and adopted in several e-learning standards out there. The IEEE, the SCORM, IMS, and things of that kind. So it's an acceptable standard. And looks at the granularity, the usability, the interoperability, and aggregation. These are very key aspects of the learning object. That granular in such a way that you can go in deeper details of that object to show you that a learning object can have as many as so many information objects, of which the information objects can have so many of this and of that, so it can go as granular as possible. But one of the most important aspects of a learning object, that it is reusable, that an information object can be picked from a certain level and reused in another content out there, which follows the same standard and will work in the same way possible. We are going to see an example. I know people are getting confused on this. So look at this. Taking this is the learning object. But it's reusable in such a sense that you have, this is the full course unit. Each course unit has an overview at the start and always has a summary at the end. And the entire course unit has what we call an assessment, an exam to assess it. But as you study the course unit as a lecturer, you know the whole what is research method, course unit called research methods. But this course unit research method, it has its overview, but when I get in, I have topics in it. And these topics are what we call information objects. So when you put together the overview, the information objects, and the summary, you plus the assessment, you get the full reusable learning object. So a learning object cannot exist without information objects, without an assessment, summary, and overview. Now, taking this, the way it was developed by Cisco, and transforming it in relation to higher education where we are, it gets into that interesting format. This particular format looks at that this is the module itself, the language we use in the higher institutions. It has an overview, which is here. It has information objects, which are the topics. It has a summary for it. These objects, once you're offering a module that has practical elements in it, we call them objects, practical objects, that you'll find out of the 10 topics, 5 of them have practicals in them. So those practicals are called practical objects, and they are linked closely with the specific information object. And then the assessment is also linked to the information object. That for topic 1 and 2, you can create an assessment, continuous assessment. 3 and 4, you can create an assessment. 5 and 6, you can create an assessment. 7 and 8, you can create an assessment. And then finally, at the end of the semester, you create a summative assessment which takes care of all the 10 objects you have in there. But the way they are developed with standards, international standards, that I can extract out an assessment of 5 and 6 out of here, and I go and use it in another module that requires me to assess using the same. Let's take an example that your research methods literature review, and there is an assessment on literature review. Then you find another module that required you to actually undertake again one topic under literature review. Instead of recreating content for that information object literature review, I can simply come to these research methods and extract out literature review information object plus its assessment object and take them to this other module without any problem, because they are developed in such a way that they are reusable. Colleagues, for more information about this information object, this is a paper that we wrote so many years back, either 2004, 5, that you can easily find in Springer, and you can know more information about it. Relating it further to the actual institution. The institution has schools, and the schools have departments, and the departments have instructional designers or the actual content designers. So you see that when you have a course, this course depends to the department, okay, of which this department is within the school and the school is within the university. So that means the course is dependent on what has been set or established by the university in form of the policies and things of that kind. Actually, here, the course also, you can look at it as a program. For example, bachelor's in information technology, of which it has a variety of modules. And this variety of modules have topics in them, have assessments in them, have practical sessions in them. But how you look at this in terms of the object, that the module is the information object. I mean the learning object. And the information object is the actual topic or topics in there. The assessment object is the assessment. All this is well laid down by the policies of the university through their schools and departments. So you see, the entire learning object is in line with the structure of the university or higher institution of learning. So it is something that relates well with what we do. And that's why it's called the higher education learning object concept. So what do you put into the overview? Usually the overview is try to tell them about what is this module all about. The code, the level, aim, learning outcome, prerequisite, co-requisite, indicative assessment. Students want to know how you're going to be assessed. They want to know. Why do you hide information from them? So they need to know. And what strategies you are using. They need to know the learning outcomes if they set out to do the course. So an overview is very, very important and comes at the top within the learning management system under your course module. The first thing that should appear there is the actual overview of this course. In summary, you don't have to give us the entire curriculum. And then the summary, as you wind up the course, this is what is required. You need a review of the entire course. What is next in terms of the examination and all that? And if there are any additional resources you would want students to reflect on. After teaching all the 15 topics, you may need to provide a recap. This is what we attempted in week 1. This is what we did. This is what a summary of the entire module. Then it comes down to the actual informational objects. As you may note here, it is a one-to-many, which means that you can have one-to-many information objects. Look at information objects as topics. The topic you teach in week 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 15. Practical, you can have no practical, depending on the type of module you are teaching, to as many practicals as possible. You may have so many information objects here, but they don't require any practical. And then you have 0. You may have so many information objects and you have just only one assessment. Or each information object, you are tagging an assessment onto it, and also the overall summative assessment, which is the exam. Now, looking at the information object itself, it is a topic. It has what we call content in it there. Content in whatever form. You may have content here in form of lecture notes. You may have content in form of animations. You may have content in form of web links. You may have content in form of discussion topics you've placed at the discussion forums. All this may be content to support this particular information object. So as you design, you need to think about this. But you may find there is some content here that may relate with another information object, that you do not have to repeat the same content. If it's the same video explaining the same content in more than one topic, why should you have to reinvent the wheel? You simply connect it. And that's what we talk about being reusable. reusability component under the different granularity levels. So it explains so well the higher education way of doing things. This is just an example of trying to describe it further in detail. Let's take an example. This is a course web design using Dreamweaver as being the learning object. It has 3 objectives to achieve. And these 3 objectives to achieve have been distributed under 3, I would say, information objects. That one information object will take care of objective 1, another one will take care of objective 2, another one will take care of objective 3. But then, under this information object, there is an assessment there, an assessment there, and an assessment there to discuss, to assess attainment of objective 3, objective 2, and objective 1. But then, around the assessment itself, as you develop the assessment, you can go deeper and say, I'm going to have 20 or 10 questions in my assessment. And the first 3 questions are going to assess the practical aspects of the course, of that topic. And then the last other 4 questions are going to assess the practical, because the other one assess the theoretical. You see, you go deeper in trying. That means you are capable of understanding even where your students are falling short. Within the content under objective 1, under topic 1, you had sections there, 1, 2, 3, 4 section up to 9. And this section is linked to a question here. If a student fails question 10 and question 6, that means the areas within that component were not mastered. And therefore, it is recommendable that the student can go back and learn better section 10 and section 6 of that topic. You see how the system now can be able to avail real-time feedback to the learners, because it can directly pick where there is low weaknesses within the content. It is the same sort of feedback generation assessment that is already being implemented in the Cisco curricula. Those of you who are following the Cisco curricula. So this is possible, and you can be able to develop it yourselves using any authoring tool that is available to you. It takes time, but it supports effective learning to happen. Further still, a description of the module and how it is put together. And then how they are able to access this sort of content. This is what I've been talking about all the time. That it can be through the iPull or iPush, or a combination of the iPull and iPush content access, or the iPush and iPull. During the transmission, many times we use the iPull, not the iPush, sorry, because the lecturer is transmitting information. They push for you what they really want you to learn. They don't give you the independence to read ahead of them. They are transmitters. And in the transformation and transaction, the iPull comes into play. That they can avail you everything to pull for yourself. And if you have already prior knowledge, you can start from the 5th topic instead of starting from topic 1. So that means as a lecturer, you've been able to cater for all different levels Whoever comes with prior knowledge, they will start at the level they feel like. And one who does not have, they will definitely start with the first topic. Sometimes we are forced to do a combination of them. You allow the I pool, students to pull for themselves, but after 1 or 2 weeks, you find learning is not happening after your evaluation because students are not following and not attending class. You may decide to close down on the rest of their continuing content and allow them to come back into class. When you feel that now they are with you, you are working together, they are progressing on well, you can now switch back into the what? I pool. And then they start pulling for themselves again. Or it can be an I push and a pull. You start by pushing for them. You start with the transmission. But as you move along, you note that actually the type of students you are teaching are already knowledgeable. You unlock the system, and the system starts allowing them to pull for themselves. They start with the fifth topic, they start with the sixth topic. In the end, you have moved away from the transmission probably into transaction and more into the transformation. So these, you need to think through and say, what type of content access will I want to allow my students to have? Let's take an example. When you go to Moodle, it allows you to do that. So we need to be able to know what we want them to do. In detail, that's the learning object concept and how it's putting the different things together. Even when it comes to assessments, the type of assessments, the question types you want to use, the formats you would want to use, are they multiple choice, short answer, essay, and all that, and how they are connected to this assessment object. Because the assessment object has all these particular ingredients into it, components in it. It has an objective, what is the object, what is the type you want to make, what is the method you want to use, the question types, and things of that kind. So all of them interlinked to only one thing, which is the learning object. This leads to all this coming down. So colleagues, I hope this concept is very, very meaningful to you and can allow you to be able to develop content in the best way possible that is reusable, that you can take and carry and use in any learning management system across the world without any problem, because it follows a certain standard which is acceptable across the world. Tomorrow, we shall try to follow the same structure and see, once we are developing content, can we be able to develop it in form of a learning object, so that once it's being accessible, it can allow reusability to happen. So going forward, we need to really think, if it's content we have been able to develop for the web, for the LMS, its presentation needs to be very, very well done. If it's content that has been developed, think through what has been embedded in. Just only the background in the content can be a complete distractor to the person reading. So think about what you put in there. Cluttered with lengthy text is not good. Too many images in the content may not be really good. Think about the fonts and colors you put in there. This may not be really good for the learners. You don't know who are there. There may be some who are colorblind. As I said, consistency is very important. Be consistent in what you are able to instruct and design. Always keep the pages simple. Tomorrow, as you do your work, practical session, keep the content simple. Avoid excessive use of animated graphics, sounds, and busy backgrounds. I hope you have noted from the slides we have, there are less images, and those images come in to emphasize a point. We have less of cluttered information. We have more of white space inside the slides. So use as much as possible white background. Use it generously. It will always bring out some of the best content developed. As you create this content in form of SCORM files, any content that exceeds one's screen roll, if you scroll the screen and pass once your screen size of your laptop or your desktop, that is not good design. You'd rather take the next content that follows to the next page. Always allow the learners to have all the content they want to read on one screen. If you want them to have another excess content to read, create links that forward them to the next screen, than engaging them in scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. It becomes boring and say a bad activity for instructional design. Page width has to be consistent for the entire content developed. The length of the page should not exceed to computer screens, as I've just said, so that content may be broken into segments. And you'll see it tomorrow. So I encourage all of you who will be attending tomorrow practical sessions. Please come with already some of your content you've developed. And you'll see how we do instruction around it and transform it into online content that can be taken within your learning management system or any other learning management system across the world. So once you come with it, it will be an opportunity for you to work with the real content going forward. As I said, use appropriate font type and sizes. Avoid certain fonts and also use certain fonts. Online, Arial, Helvetica, Verdana is easier to read. Okay? And then you have fonts like Times Roman, Georgia. It's hard to read. Times Roman in a browser is very hard to read. So you don't have to try out, use what is already tested. You need to make the text a strong contrast to the background. As I said, avoid those very shouting backgrounds like images and things of that kind. They don't help you, but what they do is to send learners away. You have used an image which somebody has hated for years, and that will be a completely turn off for that person, and they will never come back to your content. So use as much white space as possible. Keep titles, pictures, captions, etc. close to the content you are providing so that they may explain well the particular pictures and things of that kind. Do not forget to link this, and I will show you how authoring tools can help you interlink these so easily that these objects will be interlinked to the learning objects very easily. Practical will be interlinked to the information objects very easily. Assessment objects will also be interlinked. You don't have to worry. The authoring tools can do that for you every day. And once the content you have developed has been now packaged and taken to the learning management system, you'll get surprised that all this will be packaged. You can go wherever you want to go within an assessment without distracting anything else. So you just know what to do. And tomorrow you'll get the opportunity to learn how to do that. Okay? Now, it's time for you to think through going forward. I want you to consider a module you are teaching using the higher learning object concept. Create the information objects that you think you need to have, assessment objects, practical objects. Make sure you do not forget an overview and a summary of the module. All objects should be clearly interlinked to the learning objectives. Know that objective 1, 2, 3 is linked to information object 1, all information object 2, and so on. All information objects should indicate the content details, the subtopics, examples, video, web links, and all sorts of things. You can use any relevant software to publish your work. And what we are saying, what you should have done in this particular exercise is what we are going to take and do starting from 11 a.m. tomorrow, because you'll be using a certain authoring software to put all this together. And at the end, you'll have a learning object created for your course module or course unit you are delivering. Colleagues, that brings me to the conclusion for our sessions this afternoon. But what I have to conclude with is not all content published online is appropriate for e-learning. It is only that content that impacts on the learner that is essential for e-learning to be effective. I thank you so much for listening today. We are almost 30 minutes earlier for the session, but we can use the rest of the other minutes to discuss going forward. Over to you, my colleagues, and the rest of
thank you, Prof, for that really engaging presentation. And I can imagine your voice, you need some water. Maybe for the rest of the colleagues, I would implore, unless there are some points of conversation, just to highlight, that marks the end of today's session. And our colleagues, Fiona and Faith, have shared the startup for tomorrow. So tomorrow, it's more practical. We need you to get your computer, download, follow those links to download the two applications, open source application, the Hot Potato and the EXE. You need them for content authoring, but also development of assessment modules or assessment objects, as Professor has been highlighting. So having said those, maybe allow me to hand over to Francis, who's the moderator, to take us through the remainder of the sessions with comments. Francis and Tim, over to you, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Greg, Jude, Joseph, Fiona, and the rest of the team. This has been a very engaging session. I could read from the text that people shared through the chat box, and I can see that there are people who feel that they have got the value of the time. But just to encourage that today, whereas it was for fundamental theoretical aspects, tomorrow you'll have some hands-on to see how some of these environments we're talking about, the virtual learning environments, are like, and how you can make your online course what you want it to be. Of course, this is a start, and we'll always build on this. But thank you so much, the audience, those who have been here for the last 3 or 4 hours. It's incredible, and we thank you so much for it. I would like to ask anybody who has some question to ask. If there is no question, because I don't see any hand up, then we should be going to winding up. We should have finished at 5 o'clock. So as Professor Jude has said, we are 30 minutes earlier, but that also gives us time to go back to look at the kind of things that have been presented. But just to remind the presenters to please do share the materials with the audience. Any question? Okay, if there's no question, we'll just play a video clip for you to leave at leisure. Otherwise, thank you very much and see you tomorrow at 11 East African time. Thank you very much.
Rufora means a lot to me. Professionally, it is, I can say in 2 words, it's a father and mother. Fathers and mothers do 2 things: to bring you into the world and raise you up, step aside, and continue advising you as you grow older.
Rufora means everything to me because first of all, of course, of course, through the master's scholarship. I mean, if I would never got the master's scholarship from Rufora, I would not be where I am. So I'm entirely grateful to Rufora for the master's scholarship.
I'm very happy to be associated with the Reforum, and I wish they could get more funding to support more other students to do graduate studies at both master's and PhD level.
Reforum has really made a big difference at our institution. One, with the graduate projects, competitive graduate projects, they give us funds for the students to do their research, but within that, the students are able to buy laptops. Yeah, the university is able to buy some small equipments also with that funding. It is not much, but it is very useful. This year we graduated 16 students in a combination of their masters in agribusiness and their masters in crop production, and all of them at some point had some funding, either partial funding or full funding from the regional universities forum.
And it has made me more confident. And it has made me ready to think sort of outside the box, and in terms of what we can do as a faculty, and to encourage staff members within my faculty to write proposals that are more applied research type of proposals that will bring meaningful, contribution to the communities.
It saved me from where I was hopeless. And with the master's degree I have got, I think even now I can go for PhD. And the Reforum could support, I know.
To us, really, we are saying that we are married to Reforum. Why? We are bringing the science and putting it together with our knowledge, our local knowledge. So once we fuse it together, then they can take it back to the lab and write papers, and we call it our research together. So we really don't call them partners. We really say that we are married now. It's a good marriage.